I will go through all of today's Tesla stock news, and we do have some pretty important Tesla stock news today. Two stories really from China. Both of them you will probably not like at all if you are a Tesla stock investor. There's some good Tesla stock news today as well, but we'll go through the story that is controversial among Tesla stock investors. So here it is. Tesla China has announced it has lowered the price of the Model Y long range and performance by about 2,000 USD. There's now also a limited time insurance subsidy of about $1,100, but that's only for the Model 3, and that's time limited. That expires on September 30th. How exactly does this affect Tesla? Well, we need to look at the total sales because the Model Y standard range was not cut. Only the Model Y long range and performance versions were cut. And that's only 20% of Tesla's sales in China. The standard range model accounts for about 80% of the sales. So the number of vehicles impacted is not a high number. However, if you are concerned about profit specifically, we know that Tesla has better margins when it sells the performance or the long-range models in China. Gary, however, has a slightly different guess, but it's still very similar. He says that the Model Y standard range makes up 82% of Model Y China volume. He says that this price cut only lowers Tesla's earnings per share by 3.5 cents. Gary was also asked, how many more vehicles will Tesla sell because the price is now lower? And he says something that many people, I think, will strongly disagree with. He says here, there will be no bigger volume sold since all Chinese makers will follow the price cuts, just as happened the last time. Elasticity of demand for EVs is low. We are going to look at some of the facts. So when was the last quarter where Tesla did not really make any significant price cuts? Well, we would have to go back all the way to 2022 Q3 basically, and Tesla only delivered 343,000 vehicles that quarter. So if price cuts do not work, we would see basically the exact same number of deliveries as in that quarter, so 350,000, let's say. Tesla delivered 466,000 vehicles in Q2 of this year, so roughly that's a 36% change in deliveries. Obviously, price cuts did not help, right? I mean, if we didn't cut the prices, we would still have had the same amount of deliveries as we did in last quarter, right? I think after Gary thinks about this a little bit more, he's likely to change his mind slightly and add a few more deliveries because of the price cuts. I seriously don't think Tesla would have had the exact same growth if Tesla did not cut prices at all. I think that's very unreasonable to really think. But if we are talking about Tesla not doing any price cuts, but advertising very strongly, compared to just doing price cuts, yeah, I can see that point. If Gary was trying to make that point, that's a whole different conversation. But from his comment there, it didn't seem to me that that's what he actually meant. Maybe he was just in a hurry and he wasn't really thinking about everything and it's just a short reply. So maybe he meant something else. But just based on that little comment there, it seems that he's basically implying that previous price cuts had no effect at all in terms of increasing deliveries. I will give Gary the benefit of the doubt and I only assume that he specifically only means China and no other country outside of China. But even when we look at China only, clearly Tesla just had 2 record quarters in a row. Gary's comment, there will be no bigger volume sold since all Chinese makers will follow the price cut, specifically implies price cuts had absolutely nothing to do with Tesla delivering more deliveries than ever before in China. I like Gary, but I strongly disagree about this. Now, I prefer cutting prices further instead of advertising, mostly because that crushes all of the competition and that will give Tesla a bigger head start. It will be pretty much impossible to do an EV startup if Tesla's prices continue to go lower, because you would basically be in losses forever if you try to start a startup and Tesla cuts prices further. But when you are in a price war, the price cuts that are by far the most effective are when you are getting closer to almost no profits, because that's when everyone else just capitulates and they give up and they can't lower the prices anymore, because if they did, they would be losing money. Tesla can cut prices further and still make a substantial amount of money. In the meantime, all of these other competitors would have to scale back, slow down, and lose money. Some of them, many of them, go bankrupt. In other words, Tesla's price cuts right now are not just painful to other automakers, they are lethal. Gary also says that to increase Tesla's total addressable market, it's best to release the next generation vehicle. And of course, yeah, that does make sense. And he says that Tesla should not cut any more prices, but just advertise instead. But then I say, look at the Toyota Camry and compare it to the Model 3. In terms of size, these are pretty similar vehicles. But there's one big problem still. The Toyota Camry starts at about $26,000, while the Model 3 in the US starts at $40,000. So even after all of the federal subsidies, it is well above the price of the Toyota Camry, which is a similarly sized vehicle. So if we look at the upfront cost, which is what people look at when they compare vehicles, really most of them, the Model 3 is still quite a bit more expensive, unless you happen to live in one of these states that has additional huge subsidies on top of the federal subsidies. So when Gary says something like this, unlike Tesla, Apple differentiates its products versus peers through long-term investment in advertising. Tesla thinks more short-term. I have to very strongly disagree. In the long run, I think it is pretty clear that a vehicle like Model 3 in the future will cost a lot less, because you look at all of the things that actually go into the vehicle and you have less parts than a Camry if you look at the Model 3. So it would make sense that eventually it should cost less money than the Camry. Tesla often says that it is not competing against manufacturers that make EVs, it is competing against manufacturers that make gas-powered vehicles. And if you think about it from that perspective, then the choice of what to do becomes a lot more obvious, because the gas-powered vehicles, when you look at the upfront cost, are still a lot more expensive. Eventually, the cost will come down, so Tesla is just cutting now instead of later. So as a long-term investor, if we need to stimulate the demand for Tesla vehicles, price cuts would still be my preferred way to go. Although in the short term, this is certainly not going to affect the price of Tesla stock positively. I certainly don't think so. And now I'll go through the rest of today's Tesla stock news. Speaking about one of the rumors from yesterday, we had this hint from Tesla employees that something is going to be happening today, and well, we do have something happening today, price cuts, but not the announcement of a Highland, or refresh Model 3. I think it's already in production, but when is the best time to announce the Highland? I think it's when the inventory of a Model 3 is basically almost zero. Ray here says that this is possibly an indication of Tesla launching that refresh Model 3 because it's offering that insurance subsidy for the Model 3 rear-wheel drive. You can make that argument because you could say when the refresh Model 3 is going to come out, the demand is going to be quite a bit higher, so you don't want to do a permanent price cut like you just did for the Model Y trims, some of them. You want to do a temporary cut just to clear out the inventory. I think that's possible, but I'm not sure if I would be extremely confident about that, because this was announced basically together with these other price cuts. So it's a bit difficult to distinguish here between increasing the demand in the long term and between just trying to clear out the inventory just because we have a new model coming. Because if you follow Tesla closely, earlier, these temporary discounts turn into basically permanent discounts. So that's why I wouldn't hold too much weight to this specific indication here. Reuters is reporting that Indonesia said today that Tesla is going to invest into Indonesia, specifically to invest in the manufacturing of battery materials in Indonesia, and will make an announcement in the next few months. Another thing that is pretty clear is that Elon wants to invest in the manufacturing of materials for lithium batteries, and that Tesla does not want to build a car factory in Indonesia. This is an important piece of news. Recently, news broke out that a city airport in China banned all Teslas to access on-site parking facilities, citing data security concerns, causing uproar from Tesla owners and public discussion on data security. This is a relatively small airport in a tier 3 city. Wikipedia says it's used for both civilian and military flights, so that could perhaps make some sense if military is there as well. And there have been no restrictions in any major airports, at least as of now. Tesla basically released a response to that. Tesla has established a data center in China to localize data storage. All data generated by the sale of vehicles in the mainland Chinese market will be stored in China. We already knew that. This is no news really. But that airport did it anyway. They just did a moose test where the car goes like this. And the Tesla Model S did really well, actually. It outperformed the Porsche Taycan. Tesla says it will build new first-of-its-kind data centers. The automaker is hiring staff for it and snapping up some existing data centers. It appears that the refreshed Model 3 prototype has been spotted in Europe as well. There's a lot of back and forth between Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. For one moment, it seemed that the fight was completely canceled, but Elon Musk insists on the fight still continuing, and he's driving to Mark Zuckerberg's house using full self-driving, and seems like he will live stream that as well. So that will be fun to watch. Tesla wants to expand its Giga Berlin factory workforce to 22,500 workers from 11,000, so basically a doubling. And I personally really like this news. Berkshire Hathaway, which is run by Warren Buffett, basically has sold 45% of their General Motors stock. Wow. Well, they should really buy Tesla stock, but I'm not really expecting them to do that. But certainly, I would not suggest to buy GM stock. Motor Trend just did a 2023 Tesla Model Y long-range first test, and they basically said it's good. And YouTube says you should watch this video next, but if you haven't finished watching this Elon Musk interview, watch this one first. My name is Matt Posius. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.